guys, welcome to another episode of Huntstache History. So today we're going to be visiting a couple rock art sites. Some of them are new to the channel and one of them isn't. But the reason we're going to be visiting these sites today is we're going to talk about the proper etiquette, the do's and don'ts if you will, of visiting a rock art site. And it all starts right here. Alright, so growing up, we were all taught, or should have been taught, the rule of thumb when visiting the outdoors of leave no trace and leave it better than you found it. Well, that definitely applies whenever you're visiting an archaeological site. And this site in particular is one that's pretty close to my house and is pretty accessible. A lot of people know about it. And sadly, it's been defaced and vandalized pretty badly. And it has a bunch of really good examples of why it's important to never vandalize or deface a rock art site. So let's give it a look. Alright, so this first panel that we're going to look at is everything right here in red. Well, we're not actually going to focus on the red, we're going to focus on what's right here in black. So at some point within the past handful of years, some individual has decided that they needed to express their creativity by drawing a teepee and a sun over one of the rock art panels that's actually present here at this site. Pretty much the biggest significance of this is that when rock art researchers and archaeologists come to a site like this, they have to be able to decipher between what is prehistoric and what is not. And this individual has now made it a little bit more complicated for the site to be documented and surveyed. And not only that, but it's just demeaning to the culture and the history of this site. Now, just to put things into perspective exactly how significant and special this site is, this large red figure right here, whoever drew this actually rubbed the pigment off of their finger right here. So there's little smudge marks all along the side of this rock, including up on top, where you can actually see the individual's fingerprints that painted this. And another thing, if you've watched any of my videos in the past, you know that I'm absolutely fascinated with any pictograph sites that have hand paintings. Well, just next to what appears to be this rainbow and the teepee that some knucklehead drew is a handprint. And it just goes to show that you never exactly know what you're drawing over when you're defacing a rock art site. Alright, so here's another really good example of just not exactly knowing what you're potentially drawing on top of whenever you're defacing a rock art site. So right here is a large chunk of the wall that hasn't actually been defaced yet. And if you look real closely, right here in this bottom corner is a pictograph. Now, as you can see, it's really hard to make out, but what we've got here is a body that kind of comes up and to the right. You can see the antlers up here on the right hand side, legs coming down, and then you can see one of the hind legs coming down. So right here's another really good example of some defacement of a pictograph. Old Jesus and Mohammed were so excited to let you guys know that they had been here that they actually wrote their names over a pictograph. It's really hard to make out, but you can kind of see the front quarter going up to a face and a curved horn or potentially an antler coming back, and then a large body coming back to the left. It's kind of faded here in the middle, so it might have been two animals. It's really hard to tell. We'll put it into D-stretch and see if we can bring it out a little bit better, but regardless, this is a prime example of some vandalism that's taken place here at this site. Alright, well that is pretty much it for this site. We're going to move down to another site and continue talking about the do's and don'ts of visiting a rock art site. Alright, so the second thing that I wanted to talk about real quick in regards to visiting a rock art site is paying attention to what it is that you're stepping on or over or around when you visit the site. So more often than not, these rock art sites aren't just a rock art site. There's often other forms of archaeology that is associated with them. So this shelter that's right here behind me is a really good example of that. I'm going to insert some footage from the last time that I visited this site and shared it with you guys. As you can see, the grass and the weeds is just really overgrown, so it's really hard for me to show you this site right now, but around the foot of this shelter is a large rock wall that is still standing there intact, hundreds if not thousands of years after it was placed there by the individuals that once called this place home. And it would be real easy for someone to come stumbling through here, especially with the grass this tall, and knock over that wall. So it's just one more thing to think about. Whenever you're visiting a site, be cautious of stepping on any form of artifacts or little rock walls like this or any other form of archaeology that might be present. Alright, so before we move on to our third topic of discussion, I wanted to just kind of tag on to what I was saying before about when you visit a site, paying attention to the things that you're stepping on and over. As you can tell, this site has a large ledge that's kind of in front of the shelter, and say this site had some artwork that was a little bit lower and your tunnel vision on some of the artwork that's up high, you could go to kind of hop up onto this ledge to visit the artwork that's up high and unknowingly brush your boot up against some of the stuff that's lower. This site doesn't in particular have any artwork that I found that's low, but that's a good representation of just kind of paying attention to where the artwork is and any other form of archaeology that might be present at the site to make sure you don't damage it. Alright, for our third topic, we're going to talk about actually interacting with the artwork that's present at a rock art site. Pretty much don't touch it and don't put any form of liquid on it. In the past, I've heard of people using chalk to outline stuff that's really hard to see, such as this one. So here we have about 4 or 5 vertical zigzags that are, here in a row going left to right. In an instance like this, someone might pour liquid over it to get a difference in contrast between the wall and the art itself. You definitely don't want to do that. You definitely don't want to use any form of chalk to outline it to get a better feel for what you're looking at. And you don't want to place anything over the art to try to do any form of tracing. The 2 ways that I would recommend getting a better feel for what you're looking at in the field that are 100% contactless is just changing the time of day that you visit. So different forms of lighting can help visit a rock art site and get a better feel for what you're looking at. Also, the number one way that I found is utilizing the phone application known as D-Stretch. So in the field, you can just open up the application, snap a quick picture of a panel like this, and run it through a couple filters and get a better feel for what you're looking at. And it's 100% contactless. It's just a cheap application that you put on your phone and is 100% probably one of the better tools that I have for coming out in the field and doing rock art research. Alright guys, well that is it for this episode. The one last thing I did want to mention to you guys before we go is in a lot of my episodes that I post and a lot of pictures I post on social media of sites, I get asked where they are. It's up to you or not whether you keep those secret. I personally believe that that's one thing we need to do to protect these sites from wrongdoing is kind of keep them in our pocket a little bit and protect them from anybody that has the intention of doing any wrongdoing. So I just advise you to, do your due diligence to keep these sites a little bit more secretive. Obviously, we want people to visit them, but at the same token, we want to keep them safe. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope it was at least a little bit informative and entertaining. But I appreciate you following along, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in. We have ourselves a child's hand.